My name is Michael Lopsch, as you said before, thank you. And studied political science, Eastern European history and philosophy in Germany, in Bonn, and then worked for over 10 years as a foreign policy advisor in the German parliament. After the parliament decided to move to Berlin, I decided to leave the parliament and become a political analyst and expert on foreign policy, and I did a lot of work in the region of Central Asia for over 15 years. Then I went from Germany to Austria, to Vienna, and there I started as director of campaigning for a European citizen initiative, Stop Extremism, which wants to bring the European struggle against extremism, not only from any religious part, but also politically, to the EU agenda in Brussels. And we collected over 1.8 million signatures, so the European Union is now forced to deal with our, let's say, draft of a resolution which should challenge the extremism in Europe. As well, I am also writing periodically for some media in Europe regarding extremism, integration, and the struggle of new Islamism and political Islam in Europe. And I'm also editor-in-chief of the newspaper or magazine Shalom in Vienna, which is a magazine by the Austrian-Israeli Partnership Organization. So, you might think that giving a statement to such a big audience after the pandemic, I might be a little bit rusty, but I hope that everything will work out very well. I tried to make it quite briefly, so I hope that we can also have a good discussion afterwards. The Muslim Brotherhood in Europe. We always hear that the Muslim Brotherhood is quite active in the region of MENA, but are they also active here? Yes, they are. They are. I would say it. Possibly for our societies, they are a more immense threat than probably any single individual terrorist. Because beside the lives that are threatened by terrorists, the work and the aims of the Muslim Brotherhood are really a threat to our European societies. And we have to deal with that, and we have to be aware of it. Not only we as, let's say, the Westerners itself, but also the Muslim communities here in Europe. It is very important because we are one society, not only Christian, Jews, atheists, but also the Muslims. They are also a part of our European society. And this is why it is so important. There are several reasons why the Muslim Brotherhood is a threat, and why the Muslim Brotherhood became such a powerful movement here in Europe. It is because we, our Western societies, have to ask them ourselves, did our integration process since the 50s, the 60s work out? Or did it fail? What did we do wrong? The other thing is, why do still European governments and politicians cooperate closely with movements like the Muslim Brotherhood in Europe? give them huge financial support, give them a public position, and that they can become a powerful source within the Muslim community in Europe, but also as a political advocate in Western governments, parliaments, etc., PP. So we have to be aware of it. And I would like to give you a brief description of the ideological background of the Muslim Brotherhood, and then how the Muslim Brotherhood is working worldwide, but mainly here in Europe. The finances, which is a very essential part of the discussion, because an extremist with money is definitely more dangerous than an extremist without money. And we have to be aware of that. So let's start with the Muslim Brotherhood in general and its ideological background. So the Muslim Brotherhood says itself that it is a movement which is based on Islam, but not only an Islam focusing on religion, focusing on individual belief, but as a political force in everyday's life, regarding politics, regarding law, regarding society. So it is combining religious and state ideology to fill the gap after the time of the colonialism, because the Muslim Brotherhood mainly was founded to fight colonialism. It was financed mainly by the British government at the end of the 19th century to fight against the Ottoman Empire and to gain more influence in the MENA region. So we have to take this in mind, that the Muslim Brotherhood is not only an invention by Muslim people, but it was also invented by a Western government. So Islam is not a religion. Islam is not a belief for the individual, but Islam is a political force itself. And with their ideology, they want to unite all the Arab and Islamic world with only one ruling word, which is not a law or several laws which are defined and executed by the society, but the word of the Prophet is the only thing that is important and which is valid. Therefore, in consequence, they are fighting Western influence and Western values, because those values and those influences are against the word of the Prophet. Therefore, in consequence also, they are fighting tolerance and they are fighting pluralism. They are fighting equality of the genders. They are fighting diversity in the society itself. Promoting the importance of a unified ideology. There is only one kind of Islam, as I said before. But the interesting thing is, in opposition to Salafists, Daesh, etc., they are open and seem to be very tolerant to locally and regionally manifested organizational forms. The MB, especially in Egypt and in the MENA region itself, acted mainly as a humanitarian organization. Through this work as a humanitarian aid agency, they gained influence into the societies of the region. We can see this especially in Egypt, which is one main part of the strategy of the Muslim Brotherhood, especially in the Arab world. Then in consequence, the Brotherhood rapidly grew in the region without, and this is very important, without naming itself Muslim Brotherhood. There are Muslim Brotherhood organizations name themselves MB in some Arab states, but for example here in Europe, you won't find any single organization with the words Muslim Brotherhood in its name. You won't find it. You won't find any Muslim Brotherhood here in Europe. One main thing is that through its concept and through its strategy, the Muslim Brotherhood wants to marginalize any other Muslim movements because they might become a threat of their ideology and they might become a threat of their strategy, getting more and more influence in the Muslim communities. The Sharia was and is the only guideline for a statehood for the Muslim Brotherhood. Nothing else. No laws, no international agreements can be accepted by them, only the Sharia. Therefore, non-religious political and also social statehood is in their eyes simply blasphemy. Also, religious, political and social statehood cooperating with the West is also named blasphemy. So the Muslim world can only survive by uniting all Islamic countries under one single state, the Caliphate. This you might think is the same what Daesh is saying or Al-Qaeda. Yes, you are right. Most of the ideologists of Daesh and Al-Qaeda were taught ideologically and also in their propaganda by the Muslim Brotherhood. And then they became terrorists to fulfill their ideology. So this is something where you find a melting pot of the same strategy, the same concept for the caliphate. They also, what one of the founders of the Muslim Brotherhood said again and again, we have to reconquer Europe. We tried it through the Ottoman Empire in the 15th, 16th, 17th century, but this is not over yet. We have to reconquer Europe. And of course, the Muslim Brotherhood also states to reconquer Palestine, destroy Israel, and all Jews. So let's have a look how the Muslim Brotherhood is working, is collecting money, is increasing its influence. The first thing, not only in the Arab world, but mainly also here in Europe, what the MB is doing, they want to adopt in societies. They don't want to show themselves as some medieval, bearded, non-modern individuals. No, when a member of the Muslim Brotherhood would sit here, he would have a suit, he would have a tie, he wouldn't have a beard. You wouldn't recognize him. So one important point is to adapt in society so that they see you as a Westerner, as a tolerant person. They are also positive on globalization. Because globalization for their economic success is essential. They use the religion to collect money from their members, from the Muslim communities worldwide, which is huge. We come back to this later. And they're hiding their finances. There are a lot of offshore accounts by members of the Muslim Brotherhood in the Cayman Islands, British Virgin Islands, etc. So they are hiding their money trail. Who's the ideological leader at the moment? I don't want to talk about Al-Banna and Qutb, which are the founders of the ideology, but the still living Yusuf al-Qaradawi is the intellectual head behind the Muslim Brotherhood. He was taught by Hassan al-Banna, the inventor of the Muslim Brotherhood, or the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood. He was being jailed several times because of his preachings and agitation against President Nasser in Egypt. He had to leave the country and relocated in Qatar in the early 1960s, where he resides until today. He has developed, and this is the reason why we are frequently talking of Qatar as one main sponsor of the Muslim Brotherhood. He has developed close ties to Qatar's leaders and can presumably be regarded as the religious chief advisor of the ruling family in Qatar. So he made a significant career. He established various religious educational institutions and founded the Qatar University Faculty of Sharia Law. His most famous impact, not intellectually, but for the whole community of Muslims in the region, was his weekly TV talk show called Sharia and Life, broadcasted by Al Jazeera since 1996, followed by approximately 60 million views throughout the Muslim world. We as Westerners, we always think that Al Jazeera is a quite liberal TV broadcaster, spreading also some critical words into the world. But when you listen to the original Arab version of Al Jazeera, your termination might change a little bit. Al-Qaradawi was also the main scholar behind Islam Online, a popular Cairo-based Islamic website featuring resources and fatwas. And he is president of the Europe-based European Council for Fatwa and Research in the UK. This is one main institution which defines Sharias worldwide to the Muslim community globally. So there is an institution, a legal institution in the UK, teaching undemocratic Sharias into the world, and it can act openly. This is, there is no sound on. This is a brief video what Al-Qaradawi is saying about the Jews. You see that a man who does not have only influence in the Arab world, but influence on Muslims worldwide, is preaching anti-Semitism, is saying that Hitler did a great job. So this is one partial explanation why some Muslims are also anti-Semitic. And we have to fight this all together. So what about the Muslim Brotherhood in Europe? How does the organization look like and which characteristics does it have? As I said before, there is no official MB organization in Europe by its name. When you talk to somebody, when you think there might be a connection to the Muslim Brotherhood, they openly deny it. I don't have anything to do with the Muslim Brotherhood. The members present themselves as Westerners, well integrated, and they are also using current narratives popular in the West to gain support for their hidden agenda. One example is the word Islamophobia. Every critical voice trying to challenge the MB ideology here in Western Europe will be called an Islamophobe individual. There is an Islamophobia report which is published annually by a Turkish AKP-controlled institution called SETA, which lists all Islamophobe people in the world. And these are not only, let's say, right-wing Nazis, also Islamophobe are imams who are criticizing the Muslim Brotherhood. And the funny thing is, not the funny thing, the sad thing is, this Islamophobia report was co-financed by the European Commission for several years now. I was part of a team which tried to advocate to stop this financing in Brussels, and successfully the Commission and the Union stopped its financial support for this 2 years ago. But for more than 6 years, the European Union was also responsible for this Muslim Brotherhood Islamophobia report. They also look for support and public recognition by Western political, cultural, and VIP stakeholders. They don't want to be seen with, let's say, conservative or radical imams to show their cause to the religion. No, they want to show to their people, to the Muslim communities, that they are the only representatives for Muslims in the world and in Europe, and therefore they have close ties with those politicians. Let me give you a brief example. In some MB publications, there was a photo by the German Interior Minister Seehofer together with the main representative of the MB here in Germany. And under the line there was said that the MB met the Interior Minister, met the German government to sign a contract of cooperation between the German government and the Muslim Brotherhood. In fact, this photo was taken by the recent Islam conference here in Berlin, where Seehofer welcomed probably 500 representatives of the Islamic community. Also this guy from the Muslim Brotherhood. There was no contract, there was nothing. The German government even criticized the position of the Muslim Brotherhood. But this is how they try to work in their community, but also outside their community, but also inside other Muslim communities, to show we are the only representatives of Islam and you have to support us. So what might be some signals how to see if a person is supporting the Muslim Brotherhood? So you have definitely and we tried this several times and were quite successful. You have to look into the history of the organization this person is representing. There you might find some links. You have to check the founders and the activists of this organization. You might get a hint. You have to read carefully the texts and the references they use. If this is only a conservative interpretation of political, social life, religion, or are these texts going back to some Muslim Brotherhood ideologists? The financial ties are also very important. Where's the money coming from? Is the money coming from offshore accounts? This might be also a hint. And also the connections transnationally. This also can be a good proof to see where they come from. So in general, winning legitimacy, voice and influence within the Muslim communities in Europe and within Western civil majority as official representation of Muslim life in Europe. This is their main concept in getting support from the Muslims, but also from politicians, government, and society. We are the only official representation. The influence is a long-time approach since the 50s. They start with establishing national branches. They're copying the organizational structure by migrants who were already members in their homelands. And for example, here in Germany, Germany was the first country in the 50s, which was, let's say, where the Muslim community was infiltrated by the Muslim Brotherhood. People came from the Arab world to Germany. They already had contact and were members of the Muslim Brotherhood. And they started to grow with the same concept, with the same strategy they learned and were taught at home. And the main thing in the Muslim Brotherhood, let's say, community is the so-called family. Family in Arabic, usar, is the main tool to spread the message of the MB. So to grow and to define this usar, you have always 4 to 5 men who are already members, proven members of the Muslim Brotherhood. They recruit others in their local environment also to join them. And through a long process, through tests, exams, they have to prove to the family founders that they are ideologically in the right position to become a member of the family. They use tests. And when this grew on the local level, then you reach the Baya, which is then the, let's say, the unit of this family, which then can grow from the local level to the regional level, to the national level, to the transnational level. As I said, it is connecting then to other families in the region and is growing and growing. And this strategy started already in the 50s, here in Germany, for example. The first German nationwide MB organization was founded in 1958 and continued to grow until the 80s, 90s. How's the situation today? There is the Federation of Islamic Organizations in Europe, which is the cover organization of all MB activities in Europe. And you see, when you look into the names, which are difficult to read, there is no Muslim Brotherhood here. You don't see it. For example, in Germany, it's the Deutsche Muslimische Gemeinschaft, DMG, which claims to be the only non-Turkish Islamic representation here in Germany. They are members of the Islam Conference, well heard also by the media, because some don't know that this, in fact, is a Muslim Brotherhood organization, the main Muslim Brotherhood organization in Germany, or they ignore it. These are the current numbers, of course, estimated. In Germany, we have probably about 44,000 members. In the UK, 37,000. In Italy, 25. In Spain, 10,000. What is more interesting is the estimation about the national income of the Muslim Brotherhood organization. Only in Germany, there are 446 million euros annually. In the UK, 251. In Italy, 110. And in Spain, 44 million euros. To understand more properly what the strategy which opposes terror acts, etc., is, I translated, we translated a strategy paper by the Muslim Brotherhood, which was written in the 80s. It was a strategy paper for Muslim Brotherhood members here in Europe, how to act according to the philosophy of the Muslim Brotherhood. To accept the principle of temporary cooperation between Islamic movements and nationalist movements in the broad sphere and on common ground, such as the struggle against colonialism, preaching, and the Jewish state, without, however, having to form alliances. This will require, on the other hand, limited contacts between certain leaders on a case-by-case basis, as long as these contacts do not violate the Sharia law. Nevertheless, one must not give them allegiance or take them into confidence, bearing in mind that the Islamic movement must be the origin of the initiatives and orientations taking. To use diverse and varied surveillance systems in several places to gather information and adopt a single effective warning system serving the worldwide Islamic movement. In fact, surveillance, policy decisions, and effective communications complement each other. To study the centers of power, both local and worldwide, and the possibilities of placing them under influence. So they are hiding their true agenda. They want to change the Western system by going through the Western institutions, not fighting against them. The weapon called Islamophobia, as I said before, increasing influence in state-controlled agencies like the Islam Conference here in Germany, being the only partner of Western authorities, and banning all critical voices. What about the economic basis of the Muslim Brotherhood? Because, as we found out before, extremists with money are more dangerous than extremists without money. So the economic basis of the Muslim Brotherhood, one point is the banking system under Islamic law. There are very, very big banks controlling and managing the MB money worldwide. Just to mention the Al-Taqwa Bank, Aqeda International Bank, and Al-Hiyas Investment. A trading system under Islamic law, which is mainly concentrating on halal certifications. When you go to a Turkish or Arabic supermarket here in Europe and you see everywhere the halal certificate, you don't think about this is a business model, because this halal certificate is not a genuine certificate by, let's say, a political institution, the EU, for example, which is dealing normally with those certificates. No, you see several certificates. There is not one certificate. And with most of those certificates, the Muslim Brotherhood is gaining a lot of money. Also with meat, eggs, and import. The third line is the humanitarian aid under Islamic law, which is mainly done by the international organization Islamic Relief. You probably maybe heard about Islamic Relief already. This is an organization controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood. They have billions of euros. As I mentioned, the halal market, there are some statistics what the market is about and about what sums we are talking. When you see 2017, it was $1.4 billion US in the halal certificate market. We estimate that in 2023, it's already $2.6 billion US. This is the market value of the halal market. So it's a huge business. And of course, the Muslim Brotherhood is financing a lot of religious institutions in Europe. I'm happy, this is difficult to read for you, to give you this chart so you can check. Only in France, there are about 44 million euros spent for cultural and religious centers in the last years by the Muslim Brotherhood. Finally, what challenges do we have? As I said before, we have to ask ourselves, what did we do wrong? We have to ask the Muslim communities regarding integration, parallel societies, what can be done. I would say that there are enough laws which can challenge Muslim Brotherhood activities here in Europe. We don't need new laws, especially we don't need any stricter criminal actions. I would like to give you one example. In Austria, we have a conservative Green party coalition, and the conservatives became quite a populistic movement. So what they did, they want to steal the narrative against Islamism from the right-wing FPÖ. So they started campaigning against the Muslim Brotherhood by doing raids against members, going to their homes with squad forces, harassing their families, etc. This was a horrible situation, not only for families and small kids, which were They opened their eyes and saw machine guns by the squad forces of the police. But with such actions, as a result, you do the opposite. Because I spoke then with many Muslims, which were quite critical to the Muslim Brotherhood. And they said, well, we cannot tolerate what the West is doing with those members. Now we support them. In my view, what we have to do is to cut the financial sources of the Muslim Brotherhood. Don't allow them to collect money to have a financial system through offshore organizations. What we also have to do, we can, as a Western society, we can of course criticize those actions, but in fact the Muslim communities are also responsible for tackling it. We have to, and this is the only thing, what we also can do is to support liberal Islamic communities, to support critical thinkers, and not supporting anymore Muslim Brotherhood activities here in Europe. Because, as I said in the beginning, the Muslim Brotherhood is probably for our societies a threat which is not compared with Salafists or terrorists. So this is all from my side. Thank you very much. You are absolutely right. It's not only a threat to European societies, it's already a threat to the Central Asian region. Talking about Uzbekistan, talking about Tajikistan. I mean, Hizb ut-Tahrir is already very, very active in the region. Hizb ut-Tahrir is probably one of the more radical groups. Maybe you can compare them more to Daesh. But what I see when I travel to Central Asia is that especially the Turkish Milli Görüş and Diyanet influence is increasing ideologically, and in fact Milli Görüş and Diyanet is more or less a part of the Muslim Brotherhood ideology. So I see that there is definitely a threat. Also, when we look into the ethnical tensions in the region, Uzbeks, Kyrgyz, etc., etc. So this can become a real problem, not only regarding Afghanistan, which is already a challenge for your countries. So I totally agree with you. And also, the Central Asian countries have to challenge this problem. Yeah, together with the Europeans, of course. Again, you are absolutely right. When I was talking about this example with the photograph, I just wanted to give you an example how the Muslim Brotherhood's propaganda is using pictures, is using photographs for their own cause. But of course, as I also said, Western institutions finance the Muslim Brotherhood. There are different reasons why they do it. Some say, well, the Muslim Brotherhood is not Daesh, and only through cooperation and interaction we can bring them on our side. And that's the reason why we are also supporting them. They compare it mostly with the so-called Ostpolitik in the 70s and 80s. This idea says the Eastern Bloc only fell, communism only fell because we engaged with those societies. And this engagement was mainly responsible for the civil change in '89. And this same idea they transport to their, let's say, dialogue with Islamic institutions, which I would say is wrong. But this is one idea behind it. There are also others who just don't know, who really don't ignore it, that they are talking and then they are supporting a Muslim Brotherhood organization. And the third, which especially in the European Union is the case, is this new identity discussion, to be frankly. The European Union says, when I'm talking with representatives of the European Parliament and also the Commission, they always say, yes, we support them, but we have to show that we are diverse. We cannot only support liberal Muslim communities. This would discriminate those conservative Muslim communities. This is why we are supporting. We don't have a problem with that. Tell me that the Muslim Brotherhood did a bombing attack. It did not. So we are working with them. We are diverse. So this is it's a huge problem, and we have to challenge this, and we in every second point we have to point out to our governments, to our institution, who is behind the Muslim Brotherhood. But at the same time, I have to admit it has to come also from the Muslim communities. They have to stand up. They have to say, no, we don't want it anymore. We don't want this propaganda and ideology anymore. I would use the term realpolitik. The problem is, how long did it take for Europe to say that Hezbollah is a terror group or Hamas is a terror group? This never will happen with the Muslim Brotherhood, because you cannot say they are they are terrorists. They are fighting against our values. And that's the only point where Europe can be active. Someone and any organization which is challenging and questioning our Western values should not be financed by any official state institution. Point.
Today you give a presentation about how serious and critical the Muslim Brotherhood expansion in Europe. What do you think that the decision makers in Europe, whether political parties, parliament, what are the actions or measurement or at least protective steps they can take before this such expansion, especially that Muslim Brotherhood, they are representing themselves, they are representing the entire Islam. So what do you think the procedures they have to take?
The first thing is we have the European Charter of Fundamental Rights. And this could be a basis for all national governments in the EU, but also for the EU itself to say any organization which is violating at least one point of the Fundamental Rights Charter cannot receive any more public funding or any more public cooperation with official institutions. This could be a first and a very effective step, because when the Muslim communities throughout Europe see that organizations close to the Muslim Brotherhood are not anymore cooperating with official institutions, I'm quite sure that they will lose a lot of numbers in their membership. Second thing is, any organization which violates the Fundamental Rights Charter of the European Union is not allowed, or you have to control any foreign funding for this organization. This is a second step, because you can say that extremists with money are more dangerous than extremists without money. So you have to cut the financial sources from foreign countries to these organizations. I think these are two steps, first two steps, the European institutions, the European Union can take. But on the second hand, we also have to make sure that the Muslim community itself is the main player in such a fight against the Muslim Brotherhood. Because without their support and without their doing, we can do anything, but it will destroy our society, which exists of Westerners, but also of people from Muslim countries. So it is a quite effective work for the Western governments, for the Western civil societies, but also for the communities from the Muslim countries itself.
You said you can't combat them from inside within. Muslim within the community, they have to combat also. What do you think that the European government or decision makers, in a way or another, they have to do with the community, Muslim community, that they are, let us say, against the action and violations of Muslim Brotherhood? What are the decision makers have to do for those Muslims? How to support them, for example, to combat the Muslim Brotherhood? How?
Look, anytime there are official talks, official conferences, official dialogue structures between governments and the Muslim communities. As for now, I would say that, for example, the German government is mainly talking to Muslim organizations controlled by Erdogan through DTIP, controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood, or even controlled by institutions which are conducted by Tehran. I think one main thing is also to give a signal to liberal Muslim communities that they are welcome to be officially recognized as a dialogue partner for let's say, the interreligious and the intercultural discussion, for example, in Germany or in Europe as itself. So it's very essential that the officials here in the European Union also have official talks with those groups which are not controlled by a political force which has interests that violate our fundamental rights charter.
Thank you.